And for more on this, we are now being joined by Retired Colonel Rich Outzen from Washington, D.C. Outzen is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and the Jamestown Foundation. Colonel Outzen, thank you very much for talking to us this evening. This is by far the greatest challenge to Vladimir Putin since he came to power. Has he been significantly weakened or not?
Time will tell how significantly, but certainly any time the leader of a large and powerful nation with a large and powerful military is shown not to have what we call unity of command, not to have full control and monopoly over the use of force, it is a weakening of their position. So obviously Prigozhin and his 8,000 troops is not big enough to threaten actual control of the state. There were people predicting this could morph into a full civil war. There's a lot of talk about what Prigozhin's motives were. But once the families of the Wagner leadership were threatened and a few other skirmishes were conducted, Prigozhin backed down. But still, something like this is actually an armed insurrection, not a politically metaphoric insurrection. And a challenge to a leader like Putin, who relies on authoritarianism and control of the military and force, is a significant blow.
So certainly suggests a serious blow to his image. And the West will be watching this closely as well for its larger implications on the outcomes of the war in Ukraine, if any, actually.
Absolutely. So this may not determine the fate of Putin or the fate of Russia, but it certainly damages Wagner as a fighting force. Wagner has been a force that Putin has relied upon instead of or in preference over Russian regular forces in places like Mali, the Central African Republic, and Syria, and also in the fighting in Ukraine. So at a minimum now, we're seeing defections, not only with Prigozhin himself, sort of in a quasi-exile in Belarus, but we're seeing defections reportedly of some Wagner forces. You probably saw that the Wagner troops shot down approximately 9 aircraft, Russian aircraft, so they're brothers, so to speak, and resulting in the death, I think, of 17 pilots and crew members. So this is leading to some in the Wagner group to leave the group, saying we're not going to fight our own people. So Prigozhin in the end didn't bring down Putin, but he may have brought down Wagner.
Right. And in your assessment, what could be really the motivation for this revolt, and the fact that he's safe and he's been sent to Belarus?
Well, I think the best explanation I've seen, and of course it's opaque, right? Very few people have knowledge of what goes on in the minds of a Prigozhin or a Putin. But the best explanation I've seen is that Prigozhin was not getting the resources he wanted from the Ministry of Defense. He was in a long-running feud with Shoigu and Gerasimov, the military leadership in Russia, and that he was being told that his role was not sustainable. Basically, Wagner could not take Bakhmut, at least not in a decisive way, and it was not the leading role that he had foreseen for his forces. So being starved of resources, being starved of fire support, and being in this long-running feud with the Ministry of Defense, he felt his position was eroding. And I think he did this high-stakes gamble in order to shore up that position, but he lost. He was gambling that Putin would sort of give him concessions as a result of a serious threat. But Putin sort of called his bluff, and I think it doesn't end well for Prigozhin here. I think that's what his motivation was, though.
Right. And finally, I do want to ask you this, Colonel Outzen. Now, the West truly doesn't have a side in this internal strife that has erupted over the weekend. Now, Prigozhin, whose men are accused of brutal human rights abuses on one side, and Putin, of course, who's revived, a World War II style, war in many ways.
That's true. There's an old military adage that when your enemy is destroying himself, don't get in the way. So we see the strains and the stress of an unsuccessful war showing up in the Russian forces. The best thing for the West now is to let it play out. It's definitely going to damage Putin's war effort. It should give a little bit of sort of support to Ukraine's counteroffensive to take back some of its own territory. There are people who say, well, this was a big CIA operation. Of course, that's fantasy. We couldn't plan something like that and pull it off if we had even wanted to. But the best thing for the West is to watch and see and take advantage of what splits develop in the Russian war effort following this.
Right. Colonel Rich Outzen, appreciate you talking to us this evening and sharing your perspective and what this really means for Russia and for Vladimir Putin. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Thank you.